The Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, Mr. Babatunde Irukera, has reacted to the arrest of a consumer, Mrs. Chioma Egodi, by the management of Erisco Foods Limited. Now, according to Erisco, according to them, it got Mrs. Egodi, they arrested after she posted a review on Facebook about the product, which is considered to be misleading and damaging. Mr. Irukera, who has been speaking to the press on the intervention and role of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission in this development, said that it is committed to its mandate of protecting and promoting the interest and welfare of consumers by ensuring the adoption of measures to guarantee that goods and services are safe for intended use. Now, this and many other activities of the FCCPC is what we'll be looking at in the first part of the show. And I'm being joined by the Vice Chairman and the Chief Executive Officer of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, Mr. Babatunde Irukera. Thank you so much. It's good to have you in the studio.
Good afternoon.
Yes, a lot has been said, and we've seen a lot online and even offline and everywhere. But first, a post was actually, a lady posted something and has generated this comment. Where are we with regards to that issue at the moment? What more would you like Nigerians to know at this time before we move on?
Well, there are two things. We saw the post. We responded to it. The two most important things as now is that the author, that is Ms. Egodi, has regained her liberty, so she's free. And the second piece is that there's an open investigation by the FCCPC. Resecuring her liberty was just one step, while the more regulatory and far more intensive process goes on. And that investigation is open. As a matter of fact, we issued what is called a notice to produce and a summons to appear to Erisco, which they honored. The chief executive himself attended the FCCPC, and they have provided some of the information required, but there's a whole lot more information we need. I understand from the operatives within the FCCPC that a supplementary request for additional evidence has been propounded, and we're awaiting that. We're also engaging with other regulators, including NAFDAC, to look at the portal-to-portal circumstances of the product and this post. We're also running focus groups and gathering information from online channels to see what other consumers have said about the product, to validate or otherwise what the subject of the post by this particular author who became the subject of arrest was.
Let's stay with the issue of the arrest now, because I saw the CEO, Erisco, speaking at some other platform yesterday, saying that the lady was released after someone pleaded to him. And I see letters, I came across letters from your commission to the IGP. You've been interacting with the IGP. So what really played out here, and how did she get in and out? Let's put it that way.
So I won't discuss the content of our communication from the FCCPC to the Inspector General of Police. Okay. But suffice to say that the first thing we did was to track the woman. We understood that she was detained at the Egodi police station. By the time our Lagos operatives arrived there, she had been moved en route to Abuja. And so what we did was to communicate with the Inspector General of Police immediately, letting him know that we believe that this was a regulatory issue. We're getting involved, and we believe that an early release or an immediate release of the subject would facilitate the investigation. We ultimately updated that information after the investigation opened, with stating that we've now looked at a number of material, including material from Erisco itself, and we can conclude that there is no element of criminal conspiracy, and we do not believe it's a law enforcement issue, and the combination of FCCPC, SON, and NAFDAC can resolve this. It's interesting, though, that Erisco would attribute the
release.
Well, I'd even say the arrest and detention to himself. Because what that does is it just underscores the level of what kind of conduct it was here. When you have a subject of regulatory intervention admitting openly and publicly that he instigated, orchestrated, and even controlled the arrest, detention, and release process, and saying that somebody was released pursuant to appeals made to him. I think that that's a very poorly very ill-advised statement, and certainly, I mean, I'm not his lawyer, but I think that would jeopardize the legal position of Erisco as a company, and probably even he himself as an individual in any potential litigation.
So you said you won't talk about the contents of your interaction with the IGP, but what really, where did we get to, or how? Because I saw mails and memos sent to them. So, how has that been, or how did they react to this matter on their own with the police?
Oh well, I mean, I think one of the things that the feedback we've gotten is that the police tries to respond to allegations of crime.
Okay.
And you've got to grant the benefit of doubt to that. Not just that, you've got to understand that. And many times an investigation would reveal that the allegations were unfounded. Now, I wouldn't speak to the process or method of this investigation, but very clearly, there are certain responsibilities on citizens also not to raise false alarms or false allegations. It does many things, potentially jeopardizes the liberty of other citizens. It also potentially causes the police to go on wild goose chases and a waste of scarce resources for focusing on more important law enforcement issues. And that's what the theory of liability sometimes is when individuals sue other individuals or businesses for malicious prosecution, because essentially, or false detention, when both the instigator and the active participants in that whole enterprise can become liable.
Interesting stuff. Now, let's get to see where a consumer whether a consumer has the right to post whatever, review a product. That's on one side. How it affects the product manufacturer is on another side. And everybody would have to protect his or her interest. Now, how do you come in to address issues like this? The right to review, and also the right for Erisco to say, no, this is against, I've worked for 40 years, someone cannot just come mess what I've built all the while. Where do you come in this?
I think you've just identified perhaps the most important question in this entire occurrence, because that's how we can make sure that in the future this doesn't occur again. And in one of my posts, one of the things I said is that it's important for us to ensure that we don't walk this path again. The one thing, both constitutionally, before you even get into consumer rights, from a citizen's rights standpoint, free speech and the liberty to speak freely is one of the fundamentals of society. And it's a constitutional right. Now, where does free speech end? Free speech has certain limitations. And those limitations are things where, if you make a criminally defamatory statement, or even civilly defamatory statement, or statements that can potentially affect public peace or public order. And so you've got to analyze speech in that manner. It's more so when you talk about consumer feedback. One of the core elements of consumer protection, rights enforcement, and even brand innovation and improvement is feedback. Consumers must have the liberty to provide feedback. Now, consumers also have a responsibility as citizens for factually accurate statements, but the prerogative for feedback is inviolate. And in this instance, we have not seen anything that suggests this was more than feedback. The consumer speaks about their own personal experience and their own assessment. It's opinion. It is not, and even if your opinion isn't entirely factual, what we analyze opinion based on is whether there was sufficient basis or reasonable basis for you to have that opinion. And what we've done with sampling and taking polls and finding out what other people feel are the ways we come to determine that. Now, one of the most important things as a consumer protector is brand protection. Because as a consumer protection authority, we have a responsibility to protect brands also. Because if you allow a brand to be damaged, then consumers who want to continue to patronize and have access to that brand are somewhat jeopardized. And so we understand the need for Erisco or any other business for that matter to protect their brand. But there are limitations on how you do that. Part of brand protection is receiving feedback and even how you manage negative feedback, how you respond and how quickly you respond and how innovative you are in how you proceed, whether with respect to that brand. Many brands have been withdrawn from the market based on consumer feedback. Yes. And many brands are improved based on consumer feedback. And so there is the negative feedback and brand protection are not mutually exclusive. And so we're very concerned that a manufacturer or any group of manufacturers will consider feedback mechanisms as things that destroy their brand to the point where they think it's law enforcement. That should not be the case. This is in the place of commerce. There's a commercial contract and a social contract between consumers and those who produce, who they buy things from. And part of that contractual obligation, the mutual contractual obligations in there, is satisfaction and the prerogative to respond or to provide context about that satisfaction or otherwise. And so those are the key issues. This investigation is still open. I'm not about to determine one way or the other whether this was fair comment or not, and I'm certainly not about to determine one way or the other whether Erisco's product meet regulatory standards, because in any case, we do not impose standards for food and drugs, and that will be NAFTA, but we're engaging.
Indeed, this is really topical. He says that Erisco is saying now that he's going to sue this lady for 5 billion naira. And that's even after she put pen to paper to apologize. But I think he's saying that must be put on the social media platform, which she did the same. But I'm just thinking that, is there any way you think this could be settled out of court?
Oh, I mean, every civil dispute is always open to potential mutual amicable resolution. And
I will lost $15 million. He said 2 clients from China have refused to buy things from him because of that post.
Well, and so no matter how protracted or even complicated civil dispute is, civil dispute properly so-called, it's still open to a negotiated understanding. And that's not the part that we get into from a regulatory standpoint. The question of what damage you've suffered from a statement you consider potentially defamatory, or what injury you've suffered from a malicious detention or prosecution, those are mostly things that are determined by the civil courts. And you would present your case, you justify your injury, and justify what you consider the damage arising from the injury is. However, what I might say, though, is that I would be concerned if there's a judicial process that would hold a consumer accountable for fair comment, which includes feedback. And I would say that from a corporate standpoint, I think you've got to find a way to make sure that the strategies you adopt to address disputes is such that it doesn't bring the whole house down. You do not damage your brand if you want that brand to remain in the market. Many times as a regulator, I hear people who say that the operating environment in Nigeria is harsh, and sometimes that's why businesses fold up. But sometimes businesses fold up because of poor management, whether brand management, whether PR, or even operations or production. I think that if I were to advise Erisco as a consumer protection authority, I would say that it seems to me that they're in the market because some consumers buy those products, correct?
Sure.
And if consumers buy a product that is safe and appropriate, I have an obligation to try and make sure that product remains in the market. Now, if their products are safe and appropriate, I think they should adopt strategies that will keep those products in the market so that consumers will buy them, not an adversarial or combative approach towards their own consumers. Those products will not be on the shelf if people don't buy them. And so I don't understand what the strategy is here, but I think they can adopt a different strategy.
Do better. I used to say before now that many Nigerians, they didn't really know their rights. But since you've been on the helms of affairs, many of us know what's been happening, and many Nigerians are really appreciative of this.
Which is one of the reasons why this is an important case to us.
Yes, it is.
It's been quite a long walk for us to get consumers to a point where they're as vibrant as they are.
Yes.
I am the most criticized person. I'm more criticized than brands. Whenever a brand does badly, it is FCCPC and Irukera who are failing. I mean, people say to me, we're not resolving enough complaints, but that's okay. Because the impression, what we take away from that is that consumers are complaining more, which is a positive thing. And so it's very important that we do not lose all that years of promoting this expression by these types of things that chills consumers to a point where they're concerned and unable to express themselves because they're afraid of law enforcement action.
Interesting. What other issues are on ground? I know there's been a lot even before now. Yes, I think there's something about Madona University. Something also happened there. Just give us an update of other issues that FCCPC is on at the moment and Nigerians need to get updates on.
Well, with respect to Madona University, I suppose that with what has happened with Erisco, other people who believe that a similar activity had occurred are now bringing it up. So the allegation, which we read online, is that Madona University also penalized certain students and even had them detained because they made a Facebook post or expressed their dissatisfaction with some things. We don't have the full facts yet. I've read the story, but we've opened an investigation, and we're going to be looking at that also. As far as all that, we continue to do the work the best way we can. With respect to digital lending, that continues to be very topical.
Really.
We're still seeing that there's still some defamatory messages that are going. I would say that has significantly reduced, but we continue to experience some of this still occurring. And we're engaging in attacking and penalizing with each one as it's occurring. But I'd say that on a whole, I think we've succeeded in significant part because the experience we're hearing from even other countries, including some of the larger countries like India and China, is that they're still struggling, struggling more in places that we've at least made some appreciable progress.
I was looking at you. I always like to ask you this question whenever I have the opportunity with you. Your staff strength and how you manage all of this, the complaints you get. Because now many people believe in activities of the commission. How are you able to manage it all around 36 states of the Federation?
And so the approach we take is that every waking hour is a working hour. Wow. For instance, I became aware of the tweet by Miss Okoli. I would say it was about 2 a.m. in the morning, and I was in a completely different time zone and thousands of kilometers away. But when I saw that, I realized that we had to get on it. And so we initiated our internal response system, and that included waking people up from their sleep. Our staff strength is still 200 and something. We expect that to increase in a short while. But one of the things that has helped us, as you see, that most of this is leveraging technology and using technology the best way we can. I think that there's still a lot more growing for us. And ultimately, the optimized consumer protection framework or landscape is not going to be where you have a consumer protection authority that's able to resolve complaints assiduously. It's never going to happen anywhere in the world. The optimized place is for us to get to a place where companies take far more responsibility for resolving complaints with respect to their own individual products.
Oh, well, interesting stuff. Finally, let's say, should we be expecting? Anything more should we be expecting around the consumer protection? Moving on. What do you think in our generation? And what's your advice to companies like Erisco?
And so, our mandate is dual, both competition regulation and consumer protection. What I'd say we should expect is, from a consumer protection standpoint, we'll continue to scrutinize companies and hold them accountable to the people. And from a competition standpoint, we'll continue to unlock. President Bola Tinubu has repeatedly said, and he spent quite some time in New York this past week, engaging with investors and speaking to the UN and saying that, look, I'm here, I'm the head honcho, and I want to unlock opportunity for business. And so all the entry barriers, as a competition regulator, we would focus on that. And indeed, in the meeting with the Honorable Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment, she made it very clear that there are two things: protecting citizens, optimizing our economy, unlocking opportunities, and those are the things I require of you in the FCCPC. And she says she's watching, so we're going to keep doing the best we can.
Amos, thank you so much. Always interesting having you on the program. Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, Mr. Babatunde Irukera. Do have a great weekend. And we'll keep a tab on this issue.
Thank you.
All right then.